Hello, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending on where you're dialing in from. My name is Bob Lam. I'm the CEO and co-founder of ShardSecure. I'm very excited today to kick off podcast number one of a series of podcasts and webinars we will be hosting with our alliance partner KPMG. And the topic today is data protection for multi-cloud and hybrid cloud. And very honored and happy today to have our first speaker from KPMG and our special guest, one of the leaders in the industry in cloud security, Mr. Abhijeet Kulkarni, who is a partner in cybersecurity advisory at KPMG, also the Google Cloud leader for KPMG. Abhi, welcome and thank you for joining us today.
Thanks, Bob. Thanks for that warm introduction and thanks for hosting me on the session today. I'm really looking forward to this talk. Just a brief introduction about myself. My name is Abhijeet. I run our Google Cloud security business here in the US for KPMG. I'm a managing director of the firm and I'm responsible for majorly the Google Cloud side of the business, but then also cloud, anything and everything under the cloud security umbrella. Been in the industry for a little over 20 years now and have served almost every single financial services client that I can think of. And what that essentially means is I'm heavily focused on financial services as my primary industry. And at the same time, I also support healthcare and life sciences. Bob, I'm really looking forward to this discussion. Thanks.
Yeah, thank you, Abhi. So, as you said, Abhi, you have many large customers, you and your colleagues at KPMG and financial services, but you also have other industries as well. From what we are seeing from the industry and from our customers, the trend to move to the cloud, whether it's single cloud, hybrid cloud, multi-cloud, is not stopping, it's not slowing down. But every time you add more workloads or add more data being stored in the cloud, and it does add a lot of complexity, right? And there are always more risk, misconfigurations, cybersecurity risk, data privacy risk, data protection. What are the trends you're seeing out there, and what additional risk that customers listening to this podcast should pay attention to as they contemplate, go all in to the cloud? Can you share some of your insights that you're seeing with some of your many customers out there?
Yeah, Bob, that is a brilliant question, and the reason why I say that is data is front and center of any business for any organization, right? Like whether they are in cloud, whether they are on-prem, whether they are multi-cloud, hybrid approach, like you talk about it, but then the front and center is everything that revolves around data. Now, and when I talk about data, okay, what I really want all of the listeners here to understand is like it's security is a multi-fold approach, right? So as you start thinking about the cloud, when moving your data into the cloud, the first and the foremost thing that I want all the listeners to realize is security is a shared responsibility. When you go to a cloud, when you move your data into the cloud, it's a shared responsibility model that comes into play. And with that, how does that affect my data, right? So there are two lenses here: security of the cloud and security in the cloud. So whatever data, and what I mean by that is whatever data that you host in the cloud, the responsibility of securing that data is your responsibility. And when I say your, it's the listeners or the organization's responsibility. Now, security of the cloud, what I mean by that is when you move this data, and I'm going to take a classic example here. Let's say you decide to move your data into BigQuery, right? Like you decide to move one of your data warehouses or lakes into BigQuery. The underlying platform or the underlying product, which is BigQuery in the current context, the security of that product and the required controls to secure your data, whether that is at rest, in transit, is going to be the responsibility of the respective cloud service provider. Whether that is Google, Azure, AWS, doesn't matter. That security is the responsibility of that respective service provider. And now, once you move your data into BigQuery, the required controls to secure that data. And again, I'm going to give you a very good example here, which is, hey, who should have access to that data? Which regions should have access to that data? That is all your responsibilities. The cloud service provider is not going to put controls around it, but then they are going to provide you all the possible configurations and capabilities to build those controls around it. And last but not the least, the regulatory lens, right? Which is also, and especially coming from, like, given I work in the most regulated industry, which is financial services and healthcare, both of these industries are heavily regulated. So looking at those regulatory standards, whether that is FFIC, NYDFS, or to that extent in healthcare, whether we are talking about HIPAA, right? The right implementing the right set of security controls is what we need to look at for sure. Bob, does that answer your question? And I hope I was able to give that overview in terms of the lens that the listeners should apply.
No, absolutely. I mean, it was a really good answer. It's actually very comprehensive, I would say, as well. It's always a trade-off, right? Innovations and data security. And there's always a trade-off for if you're the CIO or the CISO, you have to find the right balance, right? Yeah. So let's focus on what you said, right? Security in the cloud, which is the responsibility of the customers, like data in the cloud, right? What are the best practices, Abhi? And what type of technologies you're seeing out there that could really help, let's say, regulated customers?
Yeah. So in fact, one, and you are the best person to as well talk about this, and I want to take your views as well, Bob. One capability that your product, essentially ShardSecure, provides our customers is like creating micro shards of data, right? So it's a very innovative way of solving a problem which has been consistently there in the market. Every single customer that I have is concerned about data security, right? How do I really make sure that, hey, my data is not, doesn't, like, it's not susceptible to ransomware attacks, okay? Or to that extent, my data is like some random adversary does not get access to it, whether that is an external vector, whether that is an internal vector, whatever, right? They don't get access to it. So from that lens, the legacy controls that all the listeners out here, I'm pretty sure all of you know about DLPs and like your CASB solutions and things like that. But then the root of the problem is, how do you actually secure the data itself, the actual data, right? Instead of building the compensating controls around data, I think ShardSecure does a fantastic job of addressing the data problem that we have. And Bob, I would really like to hear your views as well on this response, right? Like while I was talking about these legacy controls and legacy solutions that are available, but then also about the innovative solutions that are available, like ShardSecure.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's interesting because the legacy controls are still important, right?
Yep.
You still need the DLP and you still need AES, traditional encryption.
Yeah,
But you
absolutely.
talk
And
about
and I'm sorry to interrupt you there, right? Like
it's okay.
I might have missed talking about encryption, right? Like data at rest and data in transit. How long have we been talking about this, right? Like for last 20 years, 25 years, 30 years. Like encryption has been there for so long. But then is that enough? Is a question that needs to be answered. So sorry.
Well,
I might have
absolutely.
interrupted.
No, I mean, for some customers, it might be enough. But for many customers, especially regulated customers, it's not enough, right? That's why you see a lot of the big banks, or most of the big banks, still have a lot of the workloads and especially data in on-prem, right? So when you look at other technologies or like ShardSecure, micro-sharding, it is an additional strong layer of data security controls that customers can use to make sure that the data is safe, secure, and private, and very much unreadable and useless to the cyber criminals, right? Because the way we do it is we break the data into very small pieces, down to the bytes level, such that unless you are the customers themselves, right, the big banks or big pharma companies, that nobody can see those data. By the way, not even the cloud providers. The cloud providers cannot see the data itself. So that's another extra layer of control from we all talk about zero trust, right? From a zero trust perspective. And you mentioned ransomware is definitely interesting because the way we secure the data, we actually add resilience to the data. In the event of ransomware, ShardSecure can actually help the customers very, very quickly remediate the situation and recover the data from another storage location.
Yeah. And I just want to add one point there, Bob, and just for the benefit of listeners, right? And some of you might actually have this question as well. Sharding has been a control that has been available for as long as I've been in the industry, to be honest, right? I have a lot of you already know. And Bob, when we started our careers, I'm pretty sure we used to use sharding as part of a database strategy. A classic example
Absolutely
is customers. Like I have a ton of customers who need to align with PCI DSS regulatory standards, right? And PCI DSS specifically talks about sharding. Well, it does not talk about sharding, but then it does talk about segregation of cardholder data versus the generic data, right? As a control. Now, how do you do that? In times we used to use sharding. It's a very similar concept, the way I understand it, but then it just goes one level deep in terms of creating microsharding. And to your point, if like the capabilities that ShardSecure brings from a ransomware lens are just class leading. So yeah. So Bob, if you want to actually talk a bit more on that ransomware element, because I do have some thoughts. Some of my customers have faced issues and challenges in terms of securing data, especially from ransomware attacks. And I can definitely get down to the anatomy of a typical ransomware attack and what happens when. But then if you want to share some lights in terms of how ShardSecure can really help during or protecting customers from a potential ransomware attack, that would be I think would be of interest to our customers or listeners. Sorry.
Yeah, absolutely. So, the key thing is we help with remediation in the event of ransomware. Let's say the data is encrypted or compromised in a certain storage location. Let's say AWS S3, right? There's an attack there that the data they get encrypted, the object storage they get encrypted. The customer can actually use ShardSecure to recover the data in real time, in near real time. We talk about seconds from another storage location. They could recover from another storage location, another cloud provider. They could recover from another storage location on-prem. So in a way, right, I mean, the customer doesn't have any interruption of the services in the event of ransomware. It's pretty simple. And the idea is, if you remember, I'm sure RAID 5 or RAID 50. So our technology actually, when you look at it, it's like a RAID 50 plus N in the cloud. So that's how we remediate the situation and recover the data. And I think some of your clients would be pretty interested in learning more about this.
Yeah, and that's a pretty innovative way of, I would say, a pretty cool way of protecting data. So I wanted the listeners to hear about that. Makes sense. All right.
Right. So, let's switch gear a little bit, right? When you certainly you're the Google Cloud leader, right? For KPMG, one of the largest advisory firm and audit firm in the world. But your customers probably, okay, let's say they standardize on GCP, but they might still have, AWS or Azure. A lot of times they will use. I think we've seen some stat that 30% of the organizations now using at least two cloud providers. So what are the concerns from a data privacy, from a data security and data privacy perspective as you move to a multi-cloud environment, Abhi? So what recommendations do you give your clients, right? A customer, top 5 bank in the world, let's say. So they are in AWS, they want to move to GCP or vice versa. What are the best practices that they should adopt?
Bob, you are, and let me tell you this, right? Like with that question, you are spot on. I don't know if that 30% statistic applies to me as an individual or not, because in my 100% of my clients, literally 100%, every single client that I work with, every single, whether it's a bank, a healthcare provider, a large retail organization, every single one of them has at least two cloud providers. Okay, and that essentially means they are multi-cloud, and some of them are in fact exploring bringing in a third one. Some of them are actually exploring bringing in a fourth one just because of geopolitical restrictions, just because of the geography and like some of the regulatory requirements in some parts of the world. Okay, so with that, security in a multi-cloud environment, whether that is a single cloud provider or multi-cloud or whether you have four cloud, doesn't matter, right? The three basic fundamentals that I and the three basic challenges, to be honest, that I have seen are: one, observability, right? Like a lot of customers don't know what kind of controls are being implemented in their environment. How secure is their environment? Which one, right? At the same time, bringing in that single pane of glass across the multiple clouds, right? Like let's say you have AWS and you have GCP. How do you bring that single pane of glass so that your controls and your capabilities are consistently applied across the cloud providers? Your regulators are not going to come in and say that, hey, we need you to implement XYZ in GCP, or we need you to implement ABC in AWS, right? That does not happen. The regulators are, to that extent, the guardrails that we need to align with are consistent. It doesn't matter what platform we are on. So that observability layer is so critical that our customers need to start thinking of building a single pane of glass. Okay, that will solve the biggest problem for all of our listeners here, right? And that's also one of the biggest challenges. The second challenge that I have seen, which is also, I personally think is slightly underplayed, but then all of us, we need to start really thinking really strong on the sides of governance. It happens so, and it used to happen with me as well, right? Like back in my days when I used to do hands-on development, when I used to do hands-on engineering work, right? I always thought that, hey, why do I have to follow certain certain policies? Why do I have to follow certain guardrails and things like that, right? I want to bring efficiency. Again, I was doing, and this applies to a lot of us techies out here, right? We think that, hey, these guardrails, the governance that is being applied is kind of putting me in handcuffs. Let me tell you this, in my experience, and having seen this operationalized in some of the large Fortune 10 organizations across the globe, governance is what will really help you stay structured, stay organized, And when you really need the right set of information, let's say if you ever get into forensics discovery, your governance policies and controls will really help you to report back. Okay. So, and when I talk about governance, right, I'm not talking about your standard stuff. I'm really talking about having the right set of policies, procedures, right set of guardrails, right set of control requirements, control frameworks, having a strong architectural patterns, right? Like, let's say if you're talking about identity access management, just in Google Cloud, there are 10,000 plus individual entitlements and permissions. And now, if you don't have a strong permission model to identify and to let your developers know what permissions and what entitlements that they should use as part of their development cycle, as part of them when they deploy the resources, trust me, you are going to go south very fast. And that is also, and that actually leads me into my third one, which is misconfigurations resulting out of misconfigured IAM policies or IAM rules, which is one of the biggest challenges in the cloud environments. So how do you stay on top of all of this, right? Like, have the right set of IAM patterns built out, whether that is for privileged access, whether that is for unprivileged access, console access, CLI access. What permissions do you need? What entitlements do you need? What roles do you need? And can you survive with a primitive role versus building a custom role? So these are some of the things that should actually go in building an architectural and a deployment pattern, which can then be consumed by the developers or by you guys when you push workloads to the cloud. Last but not least, which I really want to highlight a challenge on, again, tying back to my first one, which was observability, is around logging and monitoring. Now, logging and monitoring in your multi-cloud environment, in a hybrid cloud environment to that extent, is very critical. Cloud will provide you, or CSPs will provide you every possible way to monitor your logs, right? Like, they will, every single bit of data that flows into the cloud and out of the cloud gets logged. Every time you access a particular data, that gets logged. Every time you access a particular bit, that is logged. And every single action that you take within the cloud environment gets logged. And an obvious question that all of you might have is like, hey, do I need to enable all this logging? Obviously not, right? Again, it's case to case, it's situational, depending on the tier of workload, depending on the standard, the regulatory requirement that you need to abide by, your logging requirements are going to change. But then it's not a one size fits all solution. Logging and monitoring is one of the critical aspects where I have seen a lot of my clients actually get a RMA for. So just because they don't have adequate logging and audit capabilities. Okay. So that's the last area that I would want to highlight when it comes to multi-cloud. Having a consistent logging and monitoring posture and doing analysis on top of that logging is going to be critical. Bob, did that answer? I hope.
No, absolutely. I think I agree with you. Also, all your points like observability, logging, and monitoring. Those are issues to be handled, right? Especially in a multi-cloud environment. We're also hearing from some of the big banks that they worry about resilience as they move to multi-cloud, right? Multi-cloud data resilience seems to be an area that are getting a lot of concerns as they move more workloads and data to multiple cloud providers, and that's one area that we actually serve that market pretty well at ShardSecure. I think that's great. So, I mean, change topic a little bit. Like, again, you've been doing this for a long time and do you, like, I would say that the cloud providers, the big five, have done a much better job in the last 5 years in cloud security, in the security in the cloud, than security off the cloud and in the cloud, much better than like 5 years ago, 7 years ago. But do you think today, right, for most customers, is it more secure to be in the cloud or more secure to be on-prem? I know it really depends, but I would love to hear your thoughts and insights here.
Yeah, that's you've made me thinking now. Okay. To be honest, I have never thought of security, whether it's in cloud or whether it's on-prem, but then you really made me think on this topic. So talking about it, like my view, and you might call me biased towards security. I don't mind. You can call me whatever. I'm biased towards security. It's my bread and butter, right? So security, whether it is on-prem or in the cloud, should be consistent. Okay. And going back to my earlier point, right? If let's say you are a large bank, or irrespective, you are a bank which is regulated, your regulator is not going to come in and tell you that, hey, you just because you have X amount of assets in Google or like any cloud provider, you don't need, like, these 5 controls do not apply to you. Or just because you have $1 trillion of assets on prem, you need to abide by these 10 controls. Okay. That's not how it works. The controls are consistent whether you are on prem or whether you are in the cloud. And where I'm going with this is having that consistent posture of security, whether on prem or in the cloud, is of utmost importance. Some of my clients, and again, they are like, some of them are healthcare clients, some of them are financial institutions. They are 100% cloud native. They do not have any on-prem presence as on date. Okay, some of them are startups as well, right? Like, which are 100% cloud native. For them, the underlying factor of bringing in the right set of controls and having the right control framework to that extent in place is very important. That control framework, or the cloud control framework, essentially will help them assess their overall security posture. Okay. And then get aligned and identify areas of concern. Now, well, if you ask me, is there a difference between on-prem security controls and cloud security control, like security in the cloud? Yes, there are. Obviously, there are. Whatever that you have within your environment, the amount of technology and capabilities that you use within your on-prem environment may not necessarily be used as is in the cloud. There are providers, there are solution providers, and if I have to talk about a few, like Savient or CyberArk, like these solutions do work on-prem, they do work within your environment as well, right? In the cloud environment as well. So looking at solutions which can provide you capabilities for both your environments is going to be critical. And like I said, bringing and building that consistent posture in that hybrid environment, on-prem, CSP1, CSP2, CSP3 is the most important factor.
Yeah, make perfect sense, Abhi. I mean, like when you look at our software, right? ShardSecure is a software company, and we have single API that can protect the data on-prem in a hybrid cloud, multi-cloud environment. And so I totally agree with you that really need to take a look at the holistic way of of the data protection, not just whether it's on-prem versus the cloud. It's really, holistically, how do you protect your data, right? To ensure security and resilience, right? Maybe you can give us a little bit more details on how KPMG is helping your customers in building this holistic cloud security posture. I'm sure some of the audience would be interested in hearing that.
Yeah, absolutely. At KPMG, as part of our cybersecurity services, right, we have a dedicated team of practitioners who support cloud security. Right? Some of the large, and you've heard this multiple times from me now, some of the large banks are my direct customers. Some of the large names, Fortune 100 organizations, are our direct clients. Essentially at KPMG, we help customers build a strong foundational cloud security posture. And how we do that is literally we start off helping, and again, nothing in a particular order, but then broadly talking about building a strong governance structure, building a strong control frameworks and capabilities within the governance side of the house, helping them with their first line configuration capabilities, helping them build secure landing zones, helping them build foundational capabilities as they move into cloud as part of transformation. And last but not the least, with regards to observability and logging and monitoring and response in the cloud, right? So helping, we have our homegrown solutions, our solutions which are built from scratch, which is KPMG IP, that have helped our customers improve their overall cloud security posture. And that is from whether that is from a logging and monitoring lens, whether that is from an observability lens, controls lens, you talk about it, that's something that we have helped. So talking about all these solutions that we have built, you know, our focus has been helping our customers build a consistent, reportable, and measurable environment for their security posture and improving their security posture, whether that is in AWS, Azure, GCP, on-prem, or in a hybrid model. Yeah, that's pretty much more or less what I do as bread and butter. My colleagues here, we do as bread and butter. And I also want to do highlight that we are security specialized and attested by Google Cloud and one of their largest GSIs in the North Americas across the globe. So that's about us, Bob.
Well, that's terrific. And also, Abhi, I mean, KPMG and ShardSecure are alliance partners, right? And
Yes.
so, you know, so your very comprehensive cyber services are integrated with our cybersecurity software. And certainly you are helping some of our customers in building the cybersecurity and cloud security posture as well. And we appreciate your partnership. And I'm sure our customers appreciate the partnership as well. You know, I think we can wrap it up right now. This is, again, the first of a number of podcasts and webinar. First of all, I want to thank Abhi for joining us and being my partner today and in co-hosting this podcast. And thank you, the audience, for your time. And before I let you go, I want to encourage you to download some of our collaterals on the ShardSecure website. ShardSecure was just last month was named by Gartner as a cool vendor in data privacy. And so, you know, you can download the complimentary Gartner reports from our website. And, you know, obviously we have a lot of collaterals, product materials, including some joint product materials with KPMG. You can download on our website as well. Again, I thank you for your time today and look forward to having your participation in future podcasts. Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Abhi.